You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and I'm so grateful for you to be here today. If you've been with us for a while, I love y'all. I hella love y'all. I just wanted to give a shout out. I got a DM the other day from Joanne. I'm not gonna give everyone's full name, but Joanne DM'd me, and I know Joanne vaguely through another group that I'm in, and she said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that your podcast really resonates with me." And what I love about that is that you never know who is listening. And so for those of you who are listening, who I don't know that I'm saying to you personally right now, thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for listening time after time after time. If you leave a review, definitely know that I will be shouting you out because I just appreciate you. And I just want to make sure that I'm saying thank you from the bottom of my heart of being part of this wellness revolution that I'm trying to create. And if you're new, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of our tribe. It is so important for me to have more people here just so we can continue spreading this message and continue spreading this healing. And so if you want to know a little bit more about me, again, I'm the host of this podcast because you're listening and I'm speaking. But what else am I? I'm also the founder of Rogue Experiences, which is a travel company that focuses on curating intimate trips for busy and overworked women of color who are ready to breathe, get away, and travel the world. And so something's actually coming up for that. So keep that in mind, y'all. As well as I am a Reiki master. Reiki is a Japanese form of stress reduction and relaxation. So I do Reiki sessions distant as an in-person, as well as I do healing circles every month. So we have one coming up probably in 2 weeks. Oh my God, this month is almost over. That's crazy. Or in about a week, actually. I take that back. So that's who I am. And the whole purpose of this podcast is, again, creating a wellness revolution for women of color to finally start taking care of themselves. Like, we're so busy of taking care of everyone else. This is about putting ourselves on the front burner, away from the back burner, putting on our oxygen mask first and thriving and not just surviving. And, I talked about the word tribe, and today's episode is all about building your tribe. I don't know about you, but I used to watch Sex and the City. I'm like, I need my tribe, my inner circle, my girlfriends. I always dreamed of being like Carrie because I felt like I was more like a Carrie, though I had very similar Samantha tendencies, but we're not going to go there on that one. But if you think about it, if you went the friends route, I'm not going that route, or you went the girlfriend route, which is the Ellis Ross. And we all want to have, and we need to have, that inner circle of girlfriends or friends who just hold us down. I know there's a stat and I don't really know exactly how it goes, but it talks about the 5 closest people to you really say a lot about who you are. And you want to make sure you have the right people around you. And when it comes to friends in life, you think about it. There's 3 types of friends that come into our life. You have people come to our life for a reason. You have people come into our life for a season, and you have people come to our life for a lifetime. But it's hella hard to figure out which is which. And that's why my guest today, Cathy Council, who is a bomb coach. She's a certified life coach, as well as a certified business relationship manager who focuses on coaching ambitious women like y'all to achieve their goals through creating and building strategic relationships that support, engage, promote, and celebrate who they are. So basically, she's helping people thrive and not just survive through our friendship relationships. And it's important because when you come down to our friends, if you even think about, and I love the show Insecure, and I can't wait for the next season. I wish these were hour long, and I wish the seasons last longer, but I am grateful for whatever we get. But the last season happened, you saw Issa and Molly, who were besties, really have come into points of issues. And it was you were now having people be Team Issa, Team Molly. And I don't understand who was Team Molly because Molly was mad shady. But that being said, even the best of friends can fall out. And so you need to really, when it comes down to, talking about your friends, to figure out who to let in your life, because finding friends as adults, excuse me, is really hard. It's not as easy as it was as we were kids. And so when you're thinking about who you're letting in your life, you think about, who you're letting in your life, why you're letting them into your life, and what are they adding to your life? And again, Cathy really breaks it down and kind of what you should be thinking of. And really helped me shift my mindset on a couple of things of how I looked at friendships and just my role in a friendship. So get ready to learn a lot because today is about to be fire. The last thing I want to mention is if you listened to last week's podcast episode, we talked about a dance challenge. And so I wanted to give people a chance to kind of know that it was coming. So the dance challenge is actually, and you'll be seeing me talk about it the previous week for a week or so. But if you're listening now and didn't see any of the notices that have happened all week long, this week, the week before this, because today is Sunday, what was I trying to say? Yes, it's happening tomorrow. Sometimes I get so scattered brain. Welcome to early morning on Sundays. So it was happening tomorrow. So get ready tomorrow. We'll be starting our 5-day, maybe 7 days, but we're going to go with 5 days for right now of 5 minutes of dancing. 5 minutes dancing every day, probably starting, I think it was 9 o'clock. So 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, every day we are dancing like there's no tomorrow, just for 5 minutes, 5 minutes of dancing. And just again, to continue that healing and dancing as a form of motion and healing and getting the body moving. So I hope that you join us every day at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 12 p.m. Eastern Time, for our dance challenge. But right now, let's get into this episode about friends. Hey, Cathy, thank you so much for being on the Hello Well with Danielle podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, I love this. This is kind of one of those topics I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Because I think, whenever time I think about friends, I hear that song, what about your friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing the rest because I tell people all the time, I have a horrible voice in terms of singing. But friends are so important. But kind of before we even get into that, I wanted to know, how did you get into the business of helping people even create better friendships? And what's your story?
Oh, yeah, I'll be happy to share. So professionally, in my corporate career, I was a business relationship manager. And basically what that boiled down to is I helped companies, departments, different organizations create better business relationships so that they can accomplish a common goal, often with areas that are merging or companies that are, merging or taking over other areas. And then the teams need to come together and develop these common goals that they work towards. And what I found in that profession is that it's so important, even maybe more important than the skills, that if you cannot come together and work together as a culture, a corporate culture, at least in that scenario, then it's very difficult to get the best work done, right? And at the same time, I was really, really good at this, really good at bringing people together. But I found that I had been ignoring my own personal relationships as I was kind of diving deep into these corporate mergers and bringing everyone together. I started to neglect my own.
Oh, it's yeah, I could see that. I think it's when we kind of get caught up in our career and we get kind of tunnel visions. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly what happened. And I looked up and I was on this trip with my friends and I realized we no longer had anything in common. It was so heartbreaking to realize that I had sort of neglected the friendships. And at the same time, I felt like they hadn't grown at all. So I missed the disconnect. And it wasn't until we went on this vacation that it was so painful that I wanted to go out and do all the things. And they wanted to stay in and watch reruns on TV. And I couldn't understand. I was like, I thought we were here to live. And it's just that our definition of living at that time was different. And so I went through a period of mourning the friendships that I had and thinking I was going to lose all of my friends after such a terrible trip that really turned out to be a terrible vacation. And I really went about healing. And what I ended up doing was, how do I apply principles that I use at my job, as well as principles that I have as a life coach, to come up with the best ways to create and maintain the friendships. And once I really did my personal work of healing and
Yeah.
looking at who I was, then I was able to really develop a method to help really build better friendships. And that's how I got into this.
And I love that. It's funny because I've written an article regarding, traveling with friends, because you will really learn who your friends are and who you are as a person when traveling with friends. And so it's important to kind of do some of that pre-work before even going on the trip, so you don't have moments like you experienced. But I do also believe people come into your life for different reasons. There's that people come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I'm a strong believer in that. But I also know that it's not always easy knowing which bucket the person's in. So how do you figure this out? Like, what is your method, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because a lot of times we have people that come into our life for a reason and we think it's a season. And if they're here for a season and we think it's a lifetime. And that is generally what causes the frustrations as we're moving through the years, right? Or even the months of the relationship. We're thinking this person is on our path with us for forever. So one of the things is really being honest about not only who you are, but who they are, and understand that they get to have their own path and you get to have your own path. So much so we make our friends ours, like our possession, and they come
Yeah.
with us, right? They have to
It's
do all
not
the
friend. You ain't taking her. We get real protective over those friends.
You're my friend, right? You'll even see that. People say, you're my friend, not her friend. Or if you're my friend, you can't be their friend because I'm not
or
their
you were my friend first. Don't forget that.
friend.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've all kind of said that.
Exactly, right? So we have to move away from thinking that we own the person or even the relationship. Relationships are mutual and they can go one way, they can go the other way, or they can go both ways. So it's once you put in your mind where that you are in this relationship and the other person gets to be who they are and have the experience in the relationship that they want, it gets easier for you to notice when maybe a season or a reason has come to an end. And it allows the other person to decide if they want to stay with you from a reason to a season. And if they want to stay as you go through different seasons, and perhaps that becomes a lifetime, right? Because they're growing at their own path. It
Yeah.
also allows them to go and come back without all of, the angst or animosity we can build up when we're trying to drag them along or make them be something that they're not, or when they're not ready.
I think a lot of that, you said a couple different things that I wanted to kind of talk about, but when I think about friends and I think there's a guilt sometimes to when you see that you're outgrowing someone or things aren't right, but you don't feel like comfortable talking to it. Or even when you think on the other end, and kind of I'm going on different tangents, but like sometimes when it's time to let go, but that's that comfort zone. You're like, but this person's been with me forever, or I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. How do you kind of break up with a friend?
Yeah. So you did go in a lot of different tangents. There's a
I
lot
know,
of
sorry.
things
There was a lot of because you talked about different things. I was like, ooh, there's that. There's
there.
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll start at the end and work my way back. So I don't necessarily believe you need to break up with a friend. So I teach when I work with my clients about the concept of their circle as being three-dimensional, right? So you're going to have the people that are in your immediate, like you can reach right out and touch them. They're the closest to you. But
Okay.
your circle is much bigger. It's like a sphere all around you. So some people may move in closer, and as you evolve and change, they may move further out to sort of the peripheral of your circle. And that allows for the opportunity for them to come in when you've reached a new point where you can just be close again, or it allows them the opportunity to decide if I want to move out of the circle or not, right? It's when you have people close into your sphere of influence, it feels like, this is so comfortable. I don't
Yeah.
want it to change, but we have to get comfortable with the idea of, our circle is much bigger than our left hand and right hand and what we see right in front of us. It's a sphere around us on all angles,
Mm-hmm.
and time really determines where in that circle you place people. If you become comfortable with that concept, then it will become easier for you to say, I just need to shift this person further out, or I need to bring and get closer to this person.
No, and I get what you're saying in that aspect. It's almost like people can't see, but as I'm watching you talk, about what I call the inner circle versus like the outer or middle circle, whatever, your hands are moving. It's like, so I almost felt like there's this situation of our friendships are breathing entities and they move in different ways. Sometimes as you breathe, you inhale, they get closer. As you exhale, they get further. And so it's kind of like this breathing relationship is what I saw.
Yes. Yes, it's living. It's a living relationship.
Yeah, definitely. But the one thing I wanted to throw in is, and I get having friends that may come over part of the inner circle, kind of moving further out. But there are situations that are toxic, that are abusive, that I just feel like, in my opinion, they need to be fully out of the circle, but they don't see that. Like sometimes you just need people fully out of your reach. They may even be abusive in one way.
Yes, absolutely. And usually the work there is around why you have them in your circle, right? So it's very self-focused to think that there's something about this toxic relationship, not a person, right? Because sometimes the person is the person, but there's something toxic in how you're connecting
Yeah,
to that
definitely.
person. Right? Yes, right. Because people aren't toxic. We're not poisonous. It's just about how we connect. And you may not be someone who's connecting well with that person, and they may not be someone who's connecting well with you or have your best interest in heart, right? So when you have that toxic relationship, this is where that other piece came in of fear and comfort. People get comfortable with what they know, fear what they don't know even more. So the self work is being able to work through the fear so that you are willing to step into the unknown and release the comfort of what you do know, even though it's toxic for you, even though it's maybe abusive, it is familiar. And there's something about that familiarity, that comfort of familiarity versus the fear of the unknown, that makes it hard for people to let go of toxic relationships. So we do a lot of work around you and why would you put yourself here? What is it about this connection besides the comfort and fear that keeps you from moving? What is it about that connection that prevents you from looking at it? So sometimes we don't even realize how we are showing up in that relationship, right? We know this person talks bad to me. They never on time when I make plans. They, they don't invite.
We all had one of those and many of those friends,
right?
And we've been those friends.
Yeah. So you know that you can clearly name every little thing that they're doing, but how are you showing up? What boundaries do you have in place? What have you allowed to happen? Have you been honest, or have you been people pleasing, just agreeing and going along to get along? So there's a lot of things that we can look at, that boundaries really help you break the toxic connection that you have, because you start to really address your personal actions in the relationship. And then that helps you separate from what the other person is doing, right? Because usually when it's toxic, you're thinking about everything that other person is doing and you're just reacting to it versus being mindful of what you're doing and how you're showing up and creating the necessary boundaries that you need with that relationship. Once you put boundaries in place, that person will respond to it and either remove themselves or adjust. And you can see toxic relationships become better. It's just been that there have been no boundaries and you've been feeling the weight of that relationship. And the other person actually could be almost clueless. There's that. And then there's the option of they could also be thinking you like it, right? Because you're people pleasing and you're smiling in their face and you're like,
you're pissed off at home, cussing them out to your other friend.
You're furious, right? Or the third is they have come to rely on you to bolster them, right? So that's what happens when you get people pleased. Let's say if you're on the receiving end, you've got this person who's been doing everything that you want them to do and everything that you like to do. Then you put up a boundary. And it's like, wait a minute. I enjoyed this relationship the way it was. What's going on here? Right. So that
Cathy, you understand, I feel so triggered right now. I'm just like, yo, why is she talking about one of my relationships?
We all have relationships like that.
Yeah. And it's interesting to get in and out of a relationship that was great for you for that quote unquote season. And I had a friendship that it was a really close friend of mine who, they were someone who needed to kind of save and be there for everyone. And I was someone who was a victim at the time and needed someone to constantly save me. And then when I started doing my personal development and realizing that, no, I can save my dang self and that I'm good and I can counsel my own self, that affected our relationship to where it was like, they were like, well, why are you changing? Why aren't you listening to me? Why aren't you needing me?
Yeah.
And to the point where it ended our friendship because I was like, I want to be friends with you, but not in this way. So how do you deal with that when you want to be friends with someone, but you've changed and they are wanting you to be that old person?
Yeah. So I think that's a great example that you gave with your friendship, right? Because when you evolve and change and you've created new boundaries around the friendship, and hopefully, I think you said you did have that conversation, right? So
yeah, I did. I tried several times.
Yeah, you do want to have that conversation and let them know, here's where I'm at right now with my life. And this is how I'm going to conduct myself, right? It's generally best when you have these conversations that you talk about you and how you're going to conduct yourselves. Often when we set up boundaries, sometimes it comes out of our mouth like ultimatums to the person, which is going to trigger their defense.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right? So
I'm like, you said what? Say what now?
Exactly.
That's when my inner Nene Leaks comes out.
Exactly. So what I often encourage is if there are things in your case, if there are things that you appreciated at the time, this is where I was. And I really appreciated having you do X, Y, Z. I know that you were there for me at A, B, C, right? But I've done the work. This is where I am now. This is how I'm living now and conducting myself. And I would love to continue our relationship in 1, 2, 3 ways, right? The other person does get to decide. And it may be jarring for them to say, wait a minute, I'm no longer the superhero or I'm no longer the person. And it's a painful period that can go either way, meaning they may react badly and then think about it and come back and say, we had really great XYZ. Let's continue with that and adjust. But they also get to decide that that's not what I need. I need to be the superhero. So I have to find a new victim, right? That's their own work to do. Very often we want to do our work and their work because we're trying to hold on to them to this lifetime. We have to do our work and give them the benefit and the dignity to do their work and make their own decisions about the friendship. And we can stay open.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And you talk about boundaries. You've talked about boundaries several times, and you've given some examples of like how to create some good boundaries. What are other tips that you have for creating boundaries with friends, healthy boundaries with friends?
Yeah, I think the first one is when you're creating the boundary to make sure it is about you and what you will do, not you and what they need to do, because
Yeah.
that's not a boundary. So I think people often get that confused. Well, if they would just stop bringing me cookies, then I would stop eating them, right?
I know that's right. You're like, but duh.
No, you
Cause
have
and
the
effect.
exactly. And then in that simple example, your boundary would be, well, if Danielle brings me cookies and I'm not eating cookies, I'm going to say no, thank you. Now, that's so hard for people to talk about what they're going to do, even as simple as saying no, thank you, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's important to one, set the boundary around what you're going to do. Two, you honor the boundary first. You're teaching people how to honor your boundaries. But if they say, oh, go on, it's just one cookie, and you say, oh, well, okay, you've just crossed your own
Your
boundary,
own boundary.
right?
We've all been there too.
Yes, if you hold firm and say, no, I'm really good, but I appreciate the thought that I like cookies and you brought me cookies. I appreciate the thought, but this is what I'm doing. I'm not having cookies before 8 o'clock, or I'm not having it now, or I'm not having it anymore. You be clear about what you're doing and you honor it first, because then you teach the other person to honor it. And maybe the next time Daniel won't bring you cookies, right?
And I find it harder with friendships to hold boundaries than with an intimate relationship. And I don't know what that is, but it's just like you are more protective of not hurting that person, or at least that's what I am. Then I feel guilty about, holding a boundary sometimes with friends.
So it's so interesting. You made a distinction between friendships and intimate relationships. And I will say that friendships are intimate relationships. They're just not romantic.
Okay.
They're,
Well, yeah.
they're
When I say intimate, I'm talking sexy time.
sexy time.
that's my version of sexy time. That's my
Yeah.
adult version of sexy time.
And I think that very often people have a concept that friends are like-minded. I think the same way you think. You think, so I don't have to tell you my boundaries. You should know this already
Ooh,
because
good
we
one.
think the same. And you're my friend and we like the same things. And so we might like the same things, but we've come there through two different ways of thinking. So it's a lot of assumptions that take place in friendships that we don't even realize we're making because we get along so well. So it is important to have that communication. And it doesn't have to be stated like, okay, I'm setting a boundary. You don't have to be so rigid about it, but it is as simple as saying, oh, I'm on this new plan. I'm not eating cookies. It's you informing them you are actually setting a boundary, right, around you and cookies. But it's about the communication that you have. And I think in general, as women, I'll speak since, you and I are both women, that in general, in women, we are taught more about creating romantic relationships, and your friendships are just assumed to just happen. So that's probably why you sort of have a good sense of what's acceptable, not acceptable for you in a relationship. You in your intimate relationships, what boundaries you need, where you want them to show up, how you want them to show up. Very rarely do people go through that same kind of work for their friendships, and then they wonder why they're around the people that they're around. They just let them happen.
You make such a good point because I go back to I'm an avid fan of Bridgerton, which I've seen now 4 times.
Yes.
And unjudgmentally, we'll probably see it the 5th time. But you look at it and they talk about and they train these women how to prepare themselves to be wives, but no one's talking about how to prepare you to be a friend. And we do think it's just supposed to happen naturally because that's what happens in TV.
Yes,
I love
it's
that
supposed
point.
to happen. Your friend is supposed to forgive you. Your friend is supposed to understand why you're doing what you're doing. It's a lot of assumptions and rules that we have in our heads for our friends that we don't even tell them about. And we also think they have the same rules because they should already know, right? There's a lot of that, you already know what you did was wrong, and they may not know, right?
Yeah, so true. I mean, we want to have, it's funny. You grew up wanting whatever. I want the Jake Ryan, if you were a 16 Candles fan, which clearly I was.
Yeah.
But you also I want the Sex and the City friendship. I want the girlfriends relationship. You want with those friendships in a certain way, and you're not thinking about, well, who are you in front of, and how are you also showing up? So I love how you talked about that before, about how are you showing up? Another thing you brought up that I really love was that you should have in your friend circle, you should have someone who reflects the best of who you were, who you are now, and who you are becoming. Can you kind of reflect on kind of why you feel that way?
Yes. Oh, that is so, that's what I say. And I really believe that. And if you think about, let's start with who you are now, right? The people that knew you when you were 5 or a teenager or in college, they may not know the depth of who you are now. And when you enter into new relationships, you want to present who you are now and who you are becoming, meaning where you're going, right? You don't want to say, well, I used to be, right? That's presenting who you were. Or, I used to drink soda, but now I drink seltzer. You want to go in and say, oh, I like a seltzer with lemon. You're presenting who you are and where you're going. So if you start there, and when you're meeting new people, it should be looking forward from where you are now and where you're going. You have a question about that?
No, I'm totally intrigued and listening. I'm just like,
okay. Yes. When you are in the position of inspiring or mentoring, you're generally looking at people who were who you were, who they are where you used to be. And you've crossed all of these hurdles. It is an opportunity for you to give back to others and save them from jumping the hurdles that you've jumped. You will relate to them because you'll say things. You've heard people say things. I remember when I was just like you, and I wish I had someone to help me. That affords you the opportunity to be that someone, which is beneficial to the other person and creates friendships, right? And it's beneficial to you to step into who you are now. It gets rid of that feeling of imposter syndrome because it stops you from thinking about who you were and being able to share who you are now with someone who is where you used to be. So you can start to see how you've evolved from where you were to where you are now. So I'd say it's important to make sure who you are now, you're grounded in your present situation, where you are, how you think, how you're feeling, what you're working on, what's still a vice, what's still a bad habit, what are your new good habits that you're forming and you're strengthening. That's who you are now. Where you're going is where you want to be, the goals you've set for yourself, your 5-year plan, your 1-year plan, whatever personal or professional goals you set is who you are becoming. And you should have people who embody that for you. You should have people that you can look at as examples for you to follow, while at the same time helping you get really present in how far you've come and squashing imposter syndrome. You're helping someone else move from there because you'll start to realize you have more answers than you think you do. Right? Yeah. We always think we have to be finished before we can help. And that's where imposter is like, I'm not the expert. I'm not perfect. I don't know all the answers, but you know more than that person who was where you were 2 years ago. Right. So that's the difference that's why you want your circle to reflect all of those things. It's mutually beneficial.
And it's funny, we talked about all these different things, but the one thing I didn't ask you is, why is a friend circle so important?
Yeah. So
I know. Everything. It should have been the first question. Rewind.
So we have, as humans, a need to belong. right? It's one of our basic human needs about our body, our existence, right? We have our beliefs, what we believe, what we value, and we have benevolence, how we give and share and be in community. So that last part is the belonging, the community you belong in, right? And it's a basic human need. If you think about way back in caveman, the ones that were able to form and stay together as tribes, as communities, survived better, right? And so we've evolved, right? Obviously, we can survive in many ways on our own, but that basic need of human contact, human belonging, and being a part of a circle, a tribe, a community, a network is still very much a basic human need, right? It fights against loneliness. It helps you grow and evolve faster the more perspectives you have around you. It creates innovation and creativity. It spurns growth. So it's very important to have a friend circle. It doesn't mean you have 1,000 friends. It doesn't mean you even have 10 friends. It just means you have a circle around you that makes sure it hits all these different areas of who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming. And that might be 3 friends. That might be 5 friends, right? Or it might be 2 close friends and people that you have access to that are able to supply the other aspects of your needs as a person evolving.
Yeah. And when we evolve as people, I mean, as kids, it was like, how many friends do you have? And now for me, I'm very grateful for the inner friends, and I don't need to have 20 million inner friends. I have what works for me, and being able to recognize when it's time to let go or have them expand to another section of my life has been a beautiful kind of part of my journey. One last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the act of forgiveness on both sides, forgiving yourself of how you treated a friend and also forgiving a friend on your perceived of how whatever happened in the relationship. Like, how do you work through that forgiveness on both sides in terms of friendship?
Yeah. So in forgiveness, you really want to get to a point of acceptance where then you're able to let go of the anger and the hurt. And when I say let go, I don't mean like, okay, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be hurt anymore. No, you're going to experience it. You're going to allow yourself to process it, right? You're going to recognize that there may be triggers and flare ups, but it's the acceptance that allows you to allow those emotions to happen, right? It doesn't mean you're going to allow the same things to happen or you're going to do the same things like and recreate it, but it's the allowing yourself to process it and understand what happened and accept it as, and when I use acceptance, I mean accept that it has happened, right? Not accept it as in it's acceptable.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So you want to be able to accept it and then process those feelings because it's so important to forgive both yourself and your friends in order to go in clean into the next relationships that you're trying to create. So if you find that you're constantly attracting quote unquote toxic friends, it's because you have left unresolved emotions about previous toxic relationships. So you're attracting this because you're expecting it. You're looking for that behavior and you are drawing it to you rather than fully processing, forgiving, and recognizing that person is that person. This relationship was toxic. Forgiving and let go, understanding that you can even still love the person, recognizing the relationship is toxic and they don't have to be close to you. You can love them from over there, meaning you don't wish them ill will. They get to go on and live their life. It's just not a connection that works for you and that you need in your life. But until you process the relationship by first accepting what happened, dealing with the anger, which is a secondary emotion. So anger is a secondary emotion for hurt, sadness, worthiness, pain, whatever, the real pain of that relationship is, to go through it. And doing that, also examining yourself in all of it, right? This person, we often say things like hurt my feelings. They didn't hurt your feelings. They did something that made you thought about it and you felt hurt by it. But we often shortcut things, and in our brain we shortcut things, right? Our brain is looking to be efficient. It's going to shortcut, oh, they hurt your feelings, that they're the problem, rather than processing probably everything that took place between what they did or said and your feelings being hurt. Because actually there's so much that's happening in your mind. You're looking at them, you're processing how they look and how they're acting. You're watching the energy coming off them. You're feeling that energy. You are listening to the tone of their voice. Like, your brain is taking in a lot of input and processing it. And whatever's probably more dominant or strong, even if it's probably not what you're seeing, it's just the strongest thing that your brain processed. And it's hitting you with that emotion of anger, hurt, pain, to really get you to react. It's about how your brain is translating. So sometimes it's about removing yourself from the moment to really unpack what happened between what he said or she said and my feeling hurt, angry, sad. So if we're not doing that continuously through a relationship, at the end of a relationship, we need to unpack all of those emotions and feel them and grieve, right? And give that space for ourselves and for them. And it doesn't mean that the relationship resumes when you're done. It just means that you can be at peace, and that's the forgiveness that you will receive for both you and them.
I think that's so important, to be able to, grieve situations and give yourself time to flow through it, the emotions, not to, say I'm done and mentally act like it's over. But what I got out of pretty much everything you said is that friendships, friend circles, and all these different, relationships, it boils down to also how you're showing up and where you are. And are you grounded in the person and authentic place that you want to be, and coming from a place that, it's not of hurt, that the work starts with you.
Yes, that's exactly where it starts. Most people that I start working with are coming with their friends' issues, or they'll start with, they did this, they did that, they did this. And it's really taking the moment to reverse and look at yourself, right? Because we can't control our friends, but we're very focused on everything they're doing, saying, being, but we're not looking at ourselves. And so a lot of this work is about how we show up, what expectations we had, all those rules that I mentioned earlier, that we have playing in the background that's causing us to have expectations of our friends to show up a certain way, be a certain way, and how we entered into the relationship. Were we honest when we came into the relationship, or did we put on a persona, and now we're tired of holding up, the mask, right? So if you didn't come in authentically, but now you expect it to continue in a way that you can be authentic, you're going to hit roadblocks. So what I like for people when they're building out their circle and I'm working with them is, the first thing we do is really figure out, how are they showing up now? How do they want to show up? And what's the work that we need to do to get them from there to where they want to be before we even start to connect? Because they need to be able to show up authentically. And in so many ways, we typically do not. We have a work persona, we have a family persona, we have, a Facebook online persona, and then yet another one for Instagram. And it's about, how are all of these things you? And then how can you bring all of them in every situation and show up authentically? And not just, okay, I'm going to just show you this little piece and I'm going to hide the rest. because that's when people don't really get to know you. They only get to know what you show them. And that's not always what you say. It is how you show up as well. So
that is a word. Thank you so much. How can people dive deeper with you and get their friendship circles in and themselves in check to, live the life that they were meant to live and be living hella well?
Yeah, so I can be found on my website, which is cathycouncil.com. And I also have a group program that will be starting again in April. I'm working with a group right now. But what we do is we take a life goal, whatever it is, and we work on building the relationships they have, right? Because I want to work with people who want to become who they are right now and where they want to be. So in the group, we work together as a group, moving people through that over 12 weeks. But I also work one-on-one for people that want that one-on-one attention, and we want to really go dive deep on particular relationships or repeating patterns that they have, and they can work one-on-one with me. And if you go to my website, there's a button that just says take the first step right at the top and schedule some time with me, and we can connect and figure out which path is best for you.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put that into the show notes. And so at the end of every show, I like to ask, the same quick fire questions. Like I always tell people, it's not your social security number, so don't worry.
Right.
It is, so whatever the first thing that comes to your mind, just answer whatever the first thing comes to your mind.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is, what does living hella well mean to you?
What is living hella well? Living hella well is being intentional, choosing all of the things that you're doing in life.
Love it. Aisle or window?
Window if I need to sleep.
It's a very common answer. What is always in your travel bag?
Always in my travel bag are contact lenses and glasses, both.
I feel you on that.
To see.
Seeing is very important. I actually don't like glasses for that reason, because I can't see out the side of my eyes.
Yes, I know you lose the periphery, but I've had some contact trauma where I didn't have glasses and then I was blind. So I've learned to take both.
That's a good point, because I have had an issue where I had to wear my glasses and was thankful that I had my glasses because I am blind without them.
Yes.
And then the last question is, a part of what we're doing here at the Hello Well with Danielle podcast is really creating this wellness revolution where women of color can, authentically heal and, be their authentic selves. What advice would you give your younger self to, be a part of this movement?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say for my younger self, I would tell her that it's okay to not always get an A.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's amazing how much I chased being perfect and maybe A plus. I'm like, well, is there a top of an A? I want to get top of the A. So learning to know that B is fine, a C is fine, and even a D is fine if you really earned it. And I think I would have done a lot more things sooner if I had allowed myself to get lower grades. So
that's powerful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So I, again, encourage you guys to follow her, like Cathy. Also follow her on Instagram. She didn't say anything about Instagram.
Oh, yes.
I don't think she's being low-key modest, but make sure we'll put that in there too. But make sure you guys are following her. She gives some great advice, and friends, especially right now, with, everything that's going on in this world. And, granted, we say that life is better than Trump is out, but, we still need friends. In this midst of this COVID pandemic, when you're not able to be around people, so physically, your friend circle is everything. So, I thank you, Cathy, again, for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Hello Well with Danielle podcast. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.